Thank you once again to Ravi DC and his team at the Kerala Literature Festival for this invitation. I'm delighted to be here, more specifically because this festival in Calicut was recently has been named UNESCO's first city of literature. And we are here on this grand stage of Asia's largest literature festival, drawing in 500,000 participants in a state which has the highest literacy levels of 94%. With India producing more books than ever, today the act of reading extends beyond absorbing words. It includes engaging with ideas, dialogues, and content in novel ways. As content progresses, our reading habits evolve, welcoming interactive mediums that elevate our interaction with literature rather than diminish it. The evolution is solely about the material we read, but how we engage with it. Interactivity enables readers to immerse themselves and collaboratively shape the narrative. Collective content breathes life into reading, transforming from a solitary pursuit to a communal experience, fostering discussion, forging connections, and unlocking new dimensions within storytelling. I'm going to just use some statistics, which will go against the statistics quoted by the gentleman before me. But this is from the Nielsen Book Market Report of 2022. India is obviously the world's most populous nation with 1.43 billion people, a young nation with 500 million between the ages of 5 and 24, and the second biggest English-speaking economy. India's publishing industry holds significant importance in the country's economic development, and it plays a crucial role in promoting education and learning. There are more than 24,000 publishers operating in India, and publishing industry contributes to employment generation, revenue generation, making it one of the largest media-related industries in India. India is ranked as the third largest market in the world of print books, and print book market will hit 12.1 billion US dollars in 24-25. Talking about digital transformation, publishing industry has experienced a significant transformation over the last decade due to digital technologies. The proliferation of digital devices along with the advancement of print-on-demand techniques and social media has revolutionized the way how books are created, distributed, and consumed. One of the key drivers earlier on was the transformation with the Amazon Kindle in 2007, which popularized the concept of ebooks. Revenue for ebooks is projected to reach 280 million US dollars by 2027, with approximately 134 million users. Moreover, audiobook sales are on the rise, and experts predict that audiobooks may soon overtake ebooks in popularity in time. Simultaneously, AI is transforming and disrupting literature as we knew it. So now, moving away from all these fascinating statistics into deeper insights and perspectives with our expert panel, I'm going to start with our guest who's visiting India, Emma. The opening question is for you. You have extensive publishing experience. Don't read my questions. Experience, being the head of international development for London Book Fair, being the global ambassador for Frankfurt Book Fair's Business Club. It gives you a very unique vantage point from a global publishing aspect. So how have you witnessed interactive content reshaping or transforming? How has the reading patterns changed in the last 10 years?
I think digital has transformed the way we consume and discover content exponentially. As you've said, we've had ebooks come up, we've had audiobooks come up. We're now seeing AR, augmented reality, being embedded into books and bringing stories to life. We're seeing online reading platforms that readers can change the outcome of the story. We're seeing lots of platforms where we can consume content. We're seeing blogs, we're seeing Substacks. It's not just a physical book anymore, although I think for now and perhaps for the near foreseeable future, the print book will still remain king. But digital technologies are transforming the way publishers work. So it's improving efficiencies, it's increasing accessibility, it's allowing us to do print on demand. No book needs ever go out of print anymore because of print on demand. And it also allows us to print where the customer is. So if you're in the UK and you want to reach customers in India, why not print in India on demand? No need to ship anymore.
But that's been around for a while. Print on demand has been around for at least 20 years, right? But ma'am, so specifically geographically, I mean, given your wide array of global experience, how is it more focused? Are there more changes you see in the West? Is it more?
I think more in Asian countries, actually. So you go to Japan, you go to Korea, you go to China, and there's a lot more consumption of stories online, particularly in Japan with the manga, as I'm sure we'll hear later on. You know, that's been consumed on phones for many years now. They were perhaps the leaders in reading on phones. You go on the subway and that's all you see is people reading on phones, and they're reading books, they're reading content, they're reading manga. So I think they were at the forefront of it.
Wonderful. I'm going to come back to you and ask your opinion about India later, but I'm going to go to Mugdha ji. Mugdha ji, so you're someone who wears two very different hats. You're part of the Ministry of the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Culture. You're a poet with a deep love for the written word. Congratulations on Postcard Poems, your debut collection of poems focused on love, loss, longing, and learning. You know, through your career, in various roles, I'm not going to name them, you've obviously interacted with, besides having your own special love for poets and literature, how have you seen, because you've supported festivals, you've organized discussions, you've seen it in different places, from Rajasthan to now Delhi. How have you seen reading habits change in the last few years? And for the purposes of this discussion, let's look at a decade, because otherwise it goes too far.
Yeah, so I think, thank you very much, first of all, for having me here. I always step into the shoe, my own shoe, as a reader when I think of policy making for how people are reading. It's very, very instrumental because I also hold the charge for libraries and archives. And what is interesting is that India, as we know, is a land of diversity and linguistic diversity as well. The content is very, very important. You know, the intervention of technology can ease access to content, make discoverability of content easier. But reading is an innate habit that is inculcated either in your homes or in schools, and it's a very, very individualistic pursuit. What the government can do is anticipate, and what we are not, in fact, doing even in the publishing market is that the same content has to be leveraged looking at the age profile, looking at the translation part for vernacular diversity and vernacular outreach. We also need to have many more, not just literature festivals, but book fairs around the country for people to be able to access. And also somewhere, I think this is where the governments and the publishers need to work together, is look at public libraries, which is where the 70% of the country's readers actually can be facilitated through good quality books. Also, a lot of translation needs to happen, you know, because if you are able to up the content in terms of what is actually there in an archives, in a manuscripts, then a lot of newer stories from our own country will become accessible to people. I just saw in this festival itself 3 volumes of folk tales in Kerala done in English language. And I think that was fantastic to understand a country or a state. If you can access the original content in different languages, I think that is one. Technology can help you access it. So not just publication on demand, Emma, as you mentioned, but also maybe downloadable on demand. If you can download things, so that will make things cheaper. Podcasts, audios, there's a lot of money riding on new technologies, but as we know, we live in an age of attention deficit and technologies changing very, very quickly. So we should be able to work on very short-term, medium-term plans, but a longer vision, a long-term vision has to be there, and a collaboration has to happen with the policymakers, the publishers, because the audience is the same for all of us. More books are it's easier to publish a book now, but it's even more difficult to find readers among the books that have been published. So I think we all need to collaborate together to get the right content out, make the content cheaper, make the content available in different languages, and huge use technology to be able to swiftly disseminate that content so that larger numbers of people can read what is actually available.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I know you're the Ministry of Culture, and the project you were spearheading, the Libraries Festival, was the first step towards that, which was very successful. I'm going to come back to you on that. I'm going to go to Preeti. Preeti, you know, embarking on your journey as founder of Fun OK Please in 2011, which you created contemporary Indian content for children between ages 3 and 10. I mean, I remember seeing all your books at one point of time. And now as the CEO of Amar Chitra Katha, the most iconic, you know, legacy brand. I mean, how have you seen the readership patterns in children changing in the last decade?
So with Fun OK Please, the early days, it was about picture books. It was about that basic, simple storybook format, trying to put contemporary content across. It was a struggle. Picture books as a category is a struggle in India because it's expensive. It's an expensive 4-color print job, and to expect a middle-class Indian customer to spend 300 rupees on a single story, it's a hard ask. But what I have seen, especially post-pandemic, the entire pattern has changed quite dramatically. Before the pandemic, there was always reservation on screen time. Screen time was the enemy. Keep kids away from the screen. Come COVID, wow, we have some music to accompany us. But come COVID, schooling went online. Suddenly that didn't exist you could not have that concern because that was the only way your kids would get educated. So then the concept of good screen time and how can I look at the screen as a plate, as a thali, since the earlier session was food, it's all in my head. How can I don't blame the plate, right? It's what you put on it. So don't blame the screen, put healthy content on the screen and your children will gain from it. Everything in balance is good. And so we've seen, and for a child, a device is no different from a book. They've grown up with a device in their hand. They don't have this boundary between them. So we've seen adoption of reading comics especially on tablets, not so much on the phone. But on the tablet, I had my reservations, but I enjoy reading them as well because you can actually appreciate the art. You can, zoom in and see the details the artist has left, which you can't see in print. People have written to us saying that they cast the Amar Chitra Katha app onto a TV screen. And the whole family reads a comic together every night after dinner in a post-dinner ritual. I think that's beautiful. Wonderful. That's a beautiful way for a family to bond together over an Amar Chitra Katha comic. So I think that it's evolving in a very beautiful way. As long as we keep our attention on creating meaningful, engaging, good content for children, and let the parents, the teachers, let the children make the choice on what platform they want to read on.
Wonderful. I know for most of us, I grew up reading Amar Chitra Katha to learn about the history of our country. I didn't learn that in school.
But I read on the Kindle, but my son, who's 14, he hates it. He wants only print. So.
Ananth, moving to you, I mean, we've known each other for many years. Now as the CEO of HarperCollins, we've collaborated on several occasions and, you supported one of my passion projects, which was Coral Woman, the children's book, illustrated physical one. As a key player in the international publishing landscape, see, you are sourcing, you've got a chicken and egg situation, right? So you have this whole range of books to choose from what to publish, but you have to also simultaneously see what people are consuming. Yeah. So how do you balance that? Are you setting the trend or are you following the trend in reading habits?
If you want to be successful, you have to do a bit of both. But it is and there is no formula. There is no saying that so HarperCollins is a company, we publish about 200 new books a year. There's a very large editorial team. Editors focus on whether it's fiction or non-fiction, lifestyle, health, politics. Each of them choose the best book that they feel that they've read that season. It is also true and the trends are a reflection of what people write as well. So as we head towards the election, for example, you would see that a lot more political books are coming up. There is an obsession in India with history and mythology and the past. We publish. A lot of people read that too. Personally, I'm not a fan of it because I think we are far less future-looking than we need to be as a society. But how do we choose a book? There are books that we think people have to read. understanding your place in the society. We are a young society. Our children being fed the right history, the right fact, the right information, the right psychology and science from a very young age. Like Mugdha was saying, we have the dual advantage of being the only trade publisher that's also a textbook publisher. So we publish for kindergarten to class 8. So a lot of what we publish informs how we want the younger generation to change and become a readership. We ignore important bits of the facts that all of us mentioned in the industry. We might be 1.4 billion, we'll be 2 billion in 25 years. But 500 million are poor. Digital penetration is only 5%. Having a phone does not automatically translate to saying we are all digitally connected. If you don't pick up reading as a fundamental habit, all of us can read, write, we clear exams, but we are not preparing our children for habitual narrative reading, which is a very personal, individual experience. I might not like Jeffrey Archer's 4th book, but I will like the 5th book, but that's my choice. So to go back to how many people read or not, there are some books that a lot of us will read, but a lot of books only some of us will read. So the diversity in our market, and I'm just going to echo what both Preeti and Mugdha said, is a lot of things have to happen. First is access to books.
One of the organizers, guys, can you, excuse me, can you go and tell them to turn the music down? And also your timer has stopped working. So I'm just going to go on for
We can
2
keep
hours.
on, I suppose. Yeah.
We're going to talk for 2 hours.
I think we ignore the fact that a lot of people don't have access to books. Okay. A lot of what we see a publishing industry, 8 or 10 or 12 billion, only collects people.
Okay.
It's a live session. So I think a lot has to change, and libraries is the first part. Right. But we have a certain sense of what people should be reading, and that's why we chose to publish. And a lot of what we publish is children's as well. Almost 40% of our books are children's.
And, I remember during 9/11 when I lived in the US, a lot of the how-to category books became very popular. So did you all see some sort of, Preeti mentioned after COVID or in COVID, was there a particular kind of reading pattern that you all noticed?
Well, quick off the bat is how to be employed without being an entrepreneur. We had to publish books about a gig economy, working from home, things like that. How to cook so you can live by yourself and survive. So I think life skills became very important. And how to not become a psychopath or a sociopath when you come out of
Mental
COVID.
health, right? Mental health
exactly.
books must be, yeah.
And for children, how to hold a pencil. Contrary to what we think, a lot of the kids who were 5 came back to school when they're 7. Physically, the body is grown, but mentally, because they're just living at home and watching or talking to our own families, they did not, from a psychological, qualitative aspect, become 7-year-olds in their ability to think and solve and read and comprehend. So a lot of the how-tos were also on these, bridging 2 years for a child. It's like having a,
That's a very true observation. My daughter's school
Asad,
teacher complained about her writing, and then we compared with all the parents. Every single parent got the same complaint that the writing of the kid was terrible after they came back from lockdown. Where were they writing? But
So the little anecdote I wanted to share was that on the Amachita Katha side, we get some sort of feedback. On the Tinkle front, because Tinkle is more contemporary, and at the end of the pandemic, adding to what Ananth was saying, depression amongst children and teen suicide, right? The whole conversation around gender fluidity and what does it mean to be my pronouns and all these questions. Young children writing into us and asking us. So we've actually incorporated a lot of mental health themes in Tinkle magazine. Sometimes parents, adults have written to us complaining that why are you showing this child having depression? Because it's real. This is a part of society and we must take up these issues. We have to talk about it. That's the only way you can address it.
Interesting. Emma, we spoke briefly earlier, today's publishing landscape, negotiating content rights for various platforms has become the norm. An author brings out a book and it triggers a discussion about the various narratives beyond print, contemplating broader opportunities for dimensionalizing it. How have you noticed, or how do you all go about negotiating through your various hats? And I know you also had a very successful magazine publishing prior experience. How is content, how are these rights negotiations changing?
Well, I think rights negotiations into different formats has been around for a long time, particularly with children's books, with merchandising, film, television. But I think what technology is now allowing is greater exploitation of those rights. And I think nowadays, if you're a contract lawyer in publishing, you have to be ahead of the time, all the time, you know, always future-proofing and thinking about what the opportunities are, but also how to protect and how to exploit the IP at the same time. So we're seeing things into gaming, for example. We're seeing different use cases in music. We're seeing use cases for streaming and for technology uses as well, online reading platforms, as we've mentioned already. There's many ways to slice and dice the IP these days.
Yeah, so like it's the New York Times suing everyone for using their content. You know, the AI, that's the whole area
the
which
big
I'm
thing
coming
now,
to.
yeah.
Mugdha ji, you know, last year I was very proud to be a part of your Festival of Libraries, which was organized by the Ministry of Culture and spearheaded by you. You definitely brought the glam to the ministry. And its main objective was to initiate a meaningful dialogue on the modernization, digitization of libraries, sparking a renewed interest in reading, all the stuff you said. In your perspective, what were some of the key takeaways from that festival? Because it's a brilliant initiative in encouraging diverse audiences to embrace the world of books. I mean, the number of people there was firstly astronomical.
So I can also very safely say that we did not have a media budget for the Festival of Libraries. So we followed a very traditional approach of just writing some 5,000 to 10,000 letters personally to governments, to public libraries, to private libraries, and since Asad is an eyewitness, the crowds just flowed in. And I can tell you, I'm here in Kerala today. There was a huge, number of contingent, a huge contingent that came from Kerala wearing veshtis, and you know, Delhi is like some 4 hours by flight and many, many hours by any other transportation. So the idea as a policymaker is, I will be a good policymaker if I can anticipate the trends in the country, in the global world, through technology, through AI, and if I can foresee the future, because things are changing very, very rapidly today. I need to understand my stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders who are publishing books? Who are the people who are writing the books? Who are the people who are translating, illustrating books? Who's writing for children? What content is being produced? What is it that the government can do? And who is the audience? What audience is reading what kind of stuff in which language, through which medium? Is technology dumbing us down? Are we questioning? And what is the reason for reading? So we had smaller sessions. We got together people who were writing only for children. We got people who were like poetry publication. I'm a poet, so I always find that there are no publication. Harper, I really don't think has a lot of poetry books coming out. So how do we encourage people who read, research, reflect, and then want to publish? There are a lot of independent poetry houses that have come up. How do we get them into the mainstream? How do we make their books accessible to people? See, a reader is always searching for good books to read. How does he reach books? Not just access through technology, but how does he know that this is the book that you have to read? A book fair like you have here enables me to see books at large with my naked eyes, or maybe a platform like Flipkart, Amazon allows you to go through, sift through books. But we need to do surveys. See, there are various magazines which do surveys on intimacy surveys, relationship surveys, what this generation is thinking. But there is no survey in the country of how the Indian states are actually reading. Which population, how the vernacular population is reading. Somebody told me, in fact, that the people who read books in English also do a lot of purchasing of the books, and that is how most of the Nielsen surveys from Amazon, etc., also throw up these data statistics. But they told me that they also do because of a fear of FOMO, missing out on a book of a Nobel laureate or a Booker Prize winner. But the people who actually invest money, and maybe smaller amounts, in vernacular publications actually go read, review, reach out to the author. That is something which is amazing. And now there is a trend of translating. This is a huge trend of translating stuff from different Indian states, not just Indian states, but across the world. I think this is where the meat lies, because this generation or any other generation is looking for novelty. I am little skeptical about these mediums of reaching, you know, of how you reach out, how the book travels, how the content travels. I'm not so invested in how the thing travels, because that's a business model, to be able to sell the book. But how do you write content which targets an audience, allows them to read a book which is peer level? And I think we need to invest a lot more energy in doing that. I am, as a government person, happy to understand what the government can do with all of you sitting here together. So the Festival of Libraries was just our very, very first incipient step to understand what one of my stakeholders, like the publications, like the Amar Chitra Katha, want from us, and what we want. How do we do our RFPs based on what they want from us? How do we invest book purchasing in public libraries so the author doesn't have to roam with his copies and say, please, meri book khareed lo. It becomes something which is institutionalized in policy making. So these are things we want to invest in. And I also want to do a leapfrog and say, can we turn these books into mini films, move beyond visual? Because this is what the younger generation is actually consuming. I'm not very sure how the podcasts and the audio books are doing, but definitely we need to explore this market in India in a big way. Digitization of books as a policy maker becomes important to preserve and conserve things which are written not just on paper, but many other forms, mediums, the rock edicts of Ashoka or the manuscripts of olden time. Digitization also helps in accessing books across the borders. But content and the consumer will always, always remain important. And all the other things for me will remain a part of the business model of accessing and outreach.
Thank you, Mugdha ji, for that. Preeti, you are taking ACK's philosophy as root to your roots, providing Indian children with this crucial link into the past. Now, to leverage technology to take a legacy brand into the current times must be having some of its challenges, because you've got so much more to compete with. So how is ACK faring? Tell us, you shared yesterday some interesting facts about California and how you found a group of people.
Yes. So technology actually has been a great enabler in our mission. So the P&L is one side, that we are able to have a great revenue model because our apps are paid apps. We've never had free content on it. So there is a digital subscription model, and so that's one piece of it. It helps pay the bills, that's great. But I think what really motivates us and what really drives me and gets me excited is the kind of readership that we get. So while a printed book would sell, if it sells, say 30, 40,000 copies in a year for a comic, we are very happy. It's a good number. It's a very decent number too, and I'm sure Ananth will agree with me that it's a decent number.
He wants more.
Respectable number. Respectable number for a children's comic book. But that same book, digitally, we get readership of up to 1 million, 7 lakh, 8 lakh reads. These are paid reads. And these are global. So there's an Indian diaspora sitting all around the world who is also very hungry for Indian content. They are paying, in dollars, they're paying up to $649 sometimes for a bulk subscription.
Right.
So it's, and on the other extreme is NGOs who reach out to us, schools from rural areas where Wi-Fi is now happening. And if I had to make a contribution, I would be able to give them a box of books at best. But now I can give them my entire library in multiple languages. So from the readership perspective, this entire goal of providing a route to your roots and keeping Uncle Pai's vision alive, this technology has been an amazing enabler.
Right.
Comic-Con, we went to Comic-Con San Diego in July, and we were trying to see, because it was a last-minute decision to go, so we hadn't much time to market it. So my digital head, let's find out how many subscribers do we have currently on the app in that region. He just ran the stats, just the San Diego and LA, that area. We had 7,000 paid subscribers in that area. It was amazing, right? We could reach out to them. We did a separate event for them after Comic-Con ended. Just a meet and greet, and we got them to do a workshop with us. It was beautiful.
So, coming to the content question, people, parents spend on kids publishing. Like, I buy so much for my kid, but, we try and find everything for free. So now the conversation for Ananth is, books, blogs, op-eds, websites. Today the landscape is, the definition of reading has gone obviously far beyond the book. There's different formats, but a lot of stuff is available for free and freely available. And very often when things are behind the paywall, we say, oh, okay, maybe I'll just read the headline and I'll wait to read it somewhere else. And it kind of, content is king, but at the moment, content is also available for free, a lot of it. So as a publisher, how does this impact the overall content ecosystem? How do you all make sure you're monetizing it to make money? I mean, the books you can sell, but the next avatar of the book.
It is a good question. The pragmatic way to look at what about all the content available free, especially coming from our geography, which is diverse both by language and affordability, is that for me, as long as somebody is reading, he or she will graduate to buying something they like. So if reading is a habit and they're doing it, it's good. We forget the fact that we thrust print at children until the age of 14, which is a good habit. That's where they get assimilate most of what they're taken from. Entertainment digitally is great, but learning comes a lot from reading, comprehending, writing, and thinking to themselves. And then what we expect, almost dramatically, is that this 14, 15-year-old will become a 100% digital consumer and transform the world and send rockets to the moon, which is great. But we don't think that it has to run parallel. The fact that you can be a print consumer going on to digital customer and so on. In our country, do people want most things free? The answer is yes. When they pay for it, do they want it to be the cheapest possible proposition? The answer is yes. As volumes go and as size go, we might be the third largest, but if you take the average price of a book that somebody pays, you would be paying, let's say, £5 in the UK or $7, $8 in the US. In India, that is about 200 odd rupees. So if you just say that if all of us paid the same for a book anywhere in the world, we would be number 2 maybe, because you have a potential to take our 65, 75 million audience to becoming a 300 million audience. I will stick to one more point, is that free is good in a lot of ways. It helps you discover in the right ways. A good library is free. When I grew up in Madras, I used to go to the British Council Library or the American Center, get a membership because that's where I had access to most books. And if I liked an author, then I would go to Higginbotham's down the road and buy the book. But now kids don't have, libraries in schools are behind cupboards and shut. A library hour is 1 or 2 a week. No, I'm not talking about urban India. I'm not talking about the Bombays and the Delhis of the world. Even in Delhi, I don't think there are good libraries where children can go to. The physicality of our cities, the traffic, the time, our cities are not child friendly. They have to be always taken to and brought back from. We are not friendly in that sense of the word. We don't have enough libraries. Libraries are source for free print and digital content. Read anything you want to read by all means, as long as you know it's factually correct and we're not, brainwashing you with the wrong kind of history or geography or fact. But free is good. We encourage our authors to create Substacks, podcast, any form of digital medium, as long as they can reach audiences as far and wide as possible, who will then at some point become a buying customer. We've seen that happen in India.
Right. Now, growing up, I used to go to a library in my neighborhood, which was a garage, where someone all used to donate their books, and we used to go there and rent them.
You don't see that anymore. We don't.
It was literally a garage.
Yeah.
It's
Fortunately, homes in India are very large. A lot of people are holding on to books at home, unlike foreign countries where homes are small.
Yeah.
So therefore, the need for a very large public library exists.
Right.
Here we can put books. I just want to end by saying that I didn't expect this, but the optimism and the vision of the government is something which is a refreshing change to what I've heard before from a very long time. If they pull off 50,000 libraries, we can put up 5,000 more bookstores and get more people to go discover a book saying, okay, now I want this author's work. God bless.
That's my last question to you. But anyway, but I'm just going to. This was an interesting statistic. Barnes and Noble, and I think we spoke about it. The book talk shelf consisting of old books, backlists from bestsellers, in addition to new authors whose careers have been launched courtesy TikTok. And Book Talk, with 43 billion views, has sent Barnes and Noble sales soaring. I mean, now there are these industry influencers, we spoke about it, who are now kind of helping change reading habits in a way, guiding people. So care to comment about that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the UK and in other parts of the world, Book Talk has had a huge influence in the way especially teenagers discover books, and in a way it's made reading trendy again. And that's what we need, we need role models, we need influencers who say, this is something you must do, you must pick up this book, you must read this book. And it really has launched the careers of authors, it's brought backlist books to life, and these some of them, of course, are paid influencers, but, a lot of it's organic as well. People are discovering books, and I think it's reignited a teenage love for reading. I think it's done a wonderful thing in that respect.
We've got only about 8 minutes left, and I think I'm supposed to ask the audience questions, but I can't can't move on until we cover the AI topic, and that was for you.
I think that comes along quite nicely, and book discoverability happens in lots of different ways. It happens through word of mouth, it happens through literature festivals, it happens through browsing the bookstore and being attracted by covers. But a lot of kids these days are scrolling through the reels, as we heard on the previous panels. There's something like Book Talk, Reels, and I think AI, when it comes to what good it can do for our industry, and there's a lot of bad it can do for our industry,
including writing the books.
Writing the books, especially if it's not controlled and understood and regulated and policies put in place. But there are some good things AI could do, and I think helping with book discoverability and marketing is one thing that it can do. We talked about this earlier, personalized recommendations. So if your Google search engine understands you and understands you're into cookery, it might serve up advertising for cookbooks. If it understands you're looking for books on mental health, it will serve you up advertising for books on mental health. In the UK alone, we publish 150,000 new titles every year, and that's a number that's growing and growing because of the ease of self-publishing these days. So how does the right book find the right reader? And I think AI can really help with that.
Right. Wonderful. We're just going to open it up for 2 quick questions, and then I'm going to wrap up with the audience. Yes, Ms. Dhanwani.
Thank you. That was actually a fantastic session. I was very impressed with everybody's comments. I just want to speak to one comment that Mugdha ji made about the lack of data and readership surveys. And just picking up from that, my question is to both Ananth and Preeti. What kind of data, first of all, do you use data and evidence to inform your business decisions? And if so, and I'm assuming there would be a yes there somewhere, what kind of data points are you using through your platforms, through other sources, to take decisions beyond, of course, your own sectoral experience and understanding of how trends are evolving and changing in choosing to publish the books that you do?
Okay. So with digital reading, the app is registered on a parent's name, right? It's not a child's name. So we don't actually, although we do ask for data on what is the age of the child who's reading this, it's not always provided. There are privacy issues around it as well. But where the digital reading gives us amazing data is on actually individual stories. Today, if a Tinkle magazine is going into someone's home, I don't actually know if it is being read or not. It maybe the teacher in school said your child is not reading, subscribe to Tinkle. So it's going home every month. We don't know who is reading it, which story is being read. That's just a guess. But now with the digital stats, I know exactly the point in the book where the reader has dropped off. We have an average reading time of 21 minutes. So I know where the 21 minutes is being consumed. Is it across 1 book, 3 books? In this geography, it's across these 2 titles. In this geography, this one has done well. Allows us to put out more content, and digitally it's amazing because if we create it today, we can put it up tomorrow. So putting up bite-sized content, releasing content in chapters, all that is possible. On the other side, to understand what children are reading, we have a Mugdha Children's Council. So there's about 100 children from across the country who have ACK Council badges, and we connect with them regularly. We send them new books, we get their feedback. On Tinkle, of course, it's always been an ethos of children writing and saying, this cover was rubbish, this story was really bad, I didn't like this was good, this was not good, this is great, do more of this. So listening to children all the time is very important. We're a children's publishing company, we always have been. So these are the data points, and the D2C business taking off. So us selling directly to end consumers gives us about 400-500 orders going out every day, gives us all those data points on where it's going, which book is going where is mythology selling more, where is history selling more. All of that is really, really useful for us.
On the business side, there's Nielsen BookScan. Nielsen BookScan records 45% of the Indian business. But a lot of booksellers do not provide, so 55% do not provide data to Nielsen on what is selling on a daily basis. If you go into this bookshop, what is sold today, by the time we get a sense of what publishers have sent through distributors to this bookshop, what was purchased, I would get a sense. Let's say a good book has sold 50 copies. I know that we've sold 50 copies here. But do we know if you bought it or the gentleman in the first row bought it? We don't know. So are we intuitively getting a lot of data back? The answer is no. From language publishing, which sells a lot through book fairs, we don't get any data back. DC Books and a couple of Hindi publishers report because those books sell a lot more through Amazon and other platforms that provide data to Nielsen. So we have a good, I would say, not a guesstimate of what India as a country is reading, what the demographic might be, where geographically these books are selling. But that's also the joy in publishing. If we only went by what the market data said, all of us will be reading Ikigai. So the things that we also do is we also want people to read a certain kind of book. We know that's the editorial skill, as it were, or publishing or sales or marketing skill, as it were. What social media does, again, contrary to the panel, and that's where book talk, I mean, I'll give you a strange example. There was a movie in which Rajinikanth is in jail in the opening scene. Yes? In that scene, in a very blurred image, he's reading a novel. And that novel was My Father Balaya, an original from Telugu, which became an English novel. Me being me in publishing, and a friend of mine in New Jersey where the movie first released, he sent me a grab saying, Rajinikanth is reading your novel, which was a HarperCollins novel. So we went and looked it up. It was in the backlist, only available as POD because it's been 10 years since we last published it. We put out a 5,000 print run, and the book now became a front list, as it were. It's now selling a lot more. And that, in a strange segue, that was book talk happening now. So as generation changes, new mediums people will find to both generate word of mouth. I think the greatest thing about social media is we can all tell people what we're doing. Now the choice of whether others want to follow what you're doing or not aside, we get a sense of where trends are heading. That informs a lot of publishing. We definitely need a lot more data. And then we talk about audio and fact remains, Amazon has 98% Kindle market. We don't get data. It's not shared data like Nielsen. And that's a problem everywhere in the world. So there's a lot of data that's kept away. But I think the joy in speculative publishing, as it were, and we call every book a startup. You invest in an author, they will deliver a book 2 years later, we publish it a year later, and then we don't know if you're going to buy it or not. So for us, every book is a risk, and it's a gift and a curse, as it says. There is. But more data, welcome, which is why social media is great. Please go read books, and this is a request, public interest request. If you like a book, say you like it on Goodreads, say you like it on Amazon, let people know that you're reading, read more stuff about where you're discovering your books, share generously so a lot of people can know what's a good book to read.
I'll just add one more thing because you picked up on this question from the comment that I made. I think the government is very happy to invest in a serious readership survey across the states, but we will need help of the publishers. Because most of this data right now is not available, as you rightly mentioned, is because these are now business, these business strategic data, which you cannot access. It comes with a certain IPR. So we will have to actually go back to a very conventional method of doing what you call a questionnaire-based survey. The idea is also to invest in do an intellectual brainstorming exercise with all different kinds of stakeholders to figure out what are the points on which you actually want to do a survey. And what will those points of survey actually yield in terms of outcomes which will enable that data to enable us then as policy makers to do policy making based on, evidence-based policy making. So that is very important, because what is happening right now, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. The people who do surveys want them retail, bookstores to pay them upfront a registration fee of joining, because there is a human labor cost involved in doing the statistics. So I think some capital, agnostic capital with no outcomes in terms of profiteering outcomes, a no profit, no loss kind of a investment of money has to be made to do a survey which will be most authentic and which will actually reflect the trends in India. Because we have an organization that does that kind of global surveying, but again, we are not all hooked up, to understanding and analyzing. Also libraries. See, we are in the social media world, because of the infocalypse of information that we are deeply connected and yet very, very isolated. It's a good thing. You have libraries in your neighborhood, but you still, on the click of a mouse or whatever, click of a button, you purchase things from online platform or read it on Kindle. So I think somewhere a very conscious thought on what we want for ourselves, and maybe a group consciousness has to be developed for reading to become a part, not just something that we say as a cliche from platforms, but has to be embedded as part of a lifestyle, our intellectual, mental awakening, spiritual, emotional well-being lifestyle.
I'm just going to add to that. My daughter asked for Christmas this year, she's realized that the Santa doesn't exist, so the father was asked to buy her a Kindle, which we're delighted to. But we still insist, because, everything's on a tablet, but for the eyes of the child, screen time, including the Kindle, is detrimental in the long run. So I think and we actually inculcate her to actually have her books handy in her school bag in her bathroom. That's too much information. But actual physical books to read versus just reading it on or through digital platform. Bachi, you have a question?
Hi, I just want to take a question which is coming down to a very micro level. You, from what I understand, you are trying to democratize the whole library thing, take it out of that ivory tower. So do you have any thoughts on unlocking this vast dead resource of the personal library? Because we all live in great complexes. I have a huge collection of books, and I know there are a lot of children who would like to read them. How do we unlock this?
But there are lots of people doing interesting stuff. Even in Bombay, there's Wishing Well, where you donate books. Aarti Vakil is doing it. We keep sending all our books to her. She then distributes it across NGOs, across different, and she actually ships it to different parts of India, not just for the Bombay audience. So lots of people sharing, but also book swaps are happening. All festivals have these. People are getting more conscious of, books being good.
I think people are very territorial. Old-fashioned people are very territorial about their personal libraries. They want to share them, but they don't want to give them away. So, don't you think we could do something in these large housing complexes where somebody takes becomes a champion, and really encourages.
But kids are doing it. A lot of kids are taking ownership.
It's already happening in several places, ma'am. I've stayed in 7 bungalows in Mumbai, since you mentioned Mumbai. And you have a Raheja RWA library in that very complex in which I've stayed. In Mud, where my sister is currently staying, you have an open library. It's not even locked. So there is a gymnasium for children, and there is an open shelves and open library, and the residents are encouraged to donate books that they've read. And it's not under lock and key. I'm so happy that it's not under lock and key. And there's nobody who's taking the book away they're just sitting there reading, and I see a lot of, geriatric people in that colony who sit there, read books, and conversations happen. My mom also stays there, so I know. I've seen it. So the trend is changing. I think we have to be a little more collaborative. a little more open about sharing, and books are the only things apart from food which has been shared from eternity. And I think there is, see, in the US, I was studying in the US in Berkeley, and I realized that, people had these lamp posts outside. Like in Gujarat, you have these bird feeders which is outside every house. You had these lamp post like structures in which people were culling out their books and putting it. And you can just pick a book if you want. There was no questioning, there was nothing happening, and house after house had a box-like structure where you had books you could pick up if you liked. So I think this is happening. We are trying the individual archives and collection from the manuscript point of view. India's manuscripts are scattered and are in physical possession of a lot of people. We have started what is called the manuscript mission, which has been running, but in a more focused and a serious manner, where we are requesting private collectors who have manuscripts which belong to the nation as such, which is the National Repository of the nation, to allow us to digitize it for them. They can keep the physical possession of the copy, but the digital possession of that will be available in what is called the Abhilekh Patal of the country, so that a wider audience can access those manuscripts which has evolved from our civilizational culture and history and heritage. So that is happening for the archives and the manuscripts. But as far as the personal collection is concerned, maybe if we make a federation of book clubs who want to open their houses and private libraries, that of course can be looked at. But you should not expect the government to enter your private libraries. You should do it on a more voluntary basis, I think.
On that happy note, I think we're going to start wrapping up because I'm a creature of punctuality and time. Just a closing question. Now, come on, take off that crystal ball and future gaze in the next 3 years. I won't even say 5 years because that's too long. Starting with Preeti, how do you think reading habits, consumption of content is going to change?
So I am by nature an eternal optimist. I feel very positive looking at, I know that the book retail is a difficult space, a lot of chains don't exist anymore, but at the same time, a lot of family-owned, strong destination bookstores are there in every city. E-commerce is doing a great job, and I think that education is booming, right? So every school, a lot of schools are organizing their own book fairs. They're inviting us to come and do lit fests at individual schools across the country. And print has made a big resurgence after COVID. So we are back to selling, back to our millions of copies in print as well. And we don't take any returns back. We have one publisher that takes no returns back from the market. So I know that if 4 million copies have gone out, they have gone into someone's home and someone is reading them, right? Because they're not coming back to us. And
you hope.
Each book is going to be read by at least 3 or 4 people, right? So it's all good. I'm very optimistic, and I think as publishers, our job is to keep putting out new content, fresh content, exciting stories that resonate with today's generation of readers. Give them what they want in a format that they enjoy. That's our responsibility as children's publishers.
Emma?
So I remain optimistic as well. I think print will continue to be a medium of choice, but I think we will see more audiobooks being consumed. I think we'll see more crossovers, podcasts, content starting as podcasts and then becoming books, for example. I'd like to see government policymakers prioritising reading and making it part of the national curriculum, both in the UK and elsewhere. And libraries as well. Support for libraries.
One format we didn't talk about was books to scripts. So anyway, Mugdha ji, closing comment? Quick.
I'm very hopeful as well because I think the public libraries will increasingly play a larger role. The global world has reached India. I think the vernacular world of India will, through translation, because there are not a lot of awards now, a lot of skilling, I think will be required, skilling in translation, duolinguism, academic curricula for skilling in different languages. A lot of research will happen, and I think readership is dependent on all these little points coming together as part of the larger ecosystem. I'm very hopeful because as a reader, I look forward that this space should increase because we live on both food and thoughts to keep ourselves going. So
wonderful.
very important that this becomes even better than what it is today.
Mr. Padmanabhan?
No, I just echo all of that. I'm not going to look far into the future. I'm going to concentrate on the now. If all of you went back to the bookshop and bought 5 books, I'll be very happy. Buy at least 1 book and contribute to the publishing and reading in this India. Just buy 1 book. But I think we will become the world's largest book reading community in the next 10 years. Nothing can stop us.
On that happy note, thank you for this wonderful insights you've shared. Thank you to the wonderful audience for being there. And enjoy the rest of the festival. Please go buy books. Make Ananth's dream come true. And have a good evening.